Again, my name is Daniel Smith, Managing Director for Steltix. I'm joined today and delighted to have Oracle co-present. So AJ Schifano, who'll be doing the introduction sessions shortly. Thank you, AJ, and Hyan from Oracle. And also joining the call today to do a product demonstration is Mark Barham, a Senior Supply Chain Consultant here at Steltix. So without further ado, we're going to kick off. So today's session is really around some of the cool technology that Oracle have been enabling through the digital platform, which AJ will cover off, and how Steltix is using and aligned to the product development and direction from an Oracle perspective, and how we've extended that into some cool technology, which we'll showcase today. Steltix, 23 years as a JD Edwards partner, been working with AJ and the product development team in a serious capacity, in particular around the beta testing of a number of the products that you're going to see today. And our strategy is very firmly aligned to the digital platform, which AJ is going to cover off shortly, and in particular the orchestrator. So everything sort of gravitates and hangs around the orchestrator, and that really underpins the strategy of the tools and the solutions that you're going to see today. So without further ado, AJ, I'll hand over to yourself. So thank you once again for joining the session, everyone. For those of you who have just joined, I've just done an introduction. There is a capacity to ask questions through the Q&A feature of Teams, and we'll address those at the end of the call. I'm now going to hand over to AJ to run through his section. Thanks, AJ.
Great. Well, thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Thanks for the warm introduction. And not just thanks for inviting us here for this hour, but as you said, thanks for years and years, decades of great partnership with Steltix, and all of the things that you've done to further the product and to help customers along the way. And there's going to be ample evidence of that in the next hour. So we're really excited to get started here. Cool tech. Did somebody actually say cool tech and JD Edwards in the same sentence? Is that even possible? JD Edwards has been around so long. Do we think of it as cool? Well, I mean, frankly, we do. And we think we've got some pretty cool things to share with you. Some of them over the years, some of them brand new, some of them haven't even come out yet. So we think it's pretty cool, whether you think that's Internet of Things and getting machines and robots to talk to JD Edwards, or visualizations, or mobile devices. We think it's cool to be using these things that we're putting out. Hopefully, you as customers are finding cool ways to implement JD Edwards enhancements. Lower right-hand corner there's not much cool about a whiteboard. I just threw that in because I thought the guy looked a lot like Dan. So, but Dan is one of the coolest people I know. And again, thanks for all the cool work you're doing with the products. With that, I as product manager on the JD Edwards development team, I'd like to start with an anchor position on reiterating our JD Edwards product strategy. This changes a little bit over time, but it doesn't change very much because this is our North Star, or I don't know, as you say in the Southern Hemisphere, this is a Southern Cross. This is what guides us on our development journey. And of course, we put a lot of development energy into applications and trying to make system administration easier and easier and more streamlined all the time. But today, from my point of view, we'd like to focus in on the digital platform. And when we talk about the digital platform specifically, we're putting development effort, focused investment in process automation, low-code, no-code tools built right into the JD Edwards product, and enterprise integrations. And again, if you hold those three bullets in your head, or maybe jot them down on a napkin as we go through, I think you're going to see ample evidence of JD Edwards product development and Steltix marching to this tune towards our strategy. So what is this thing we call the JD Edwards digital platform? Is it a thing I have to order? Do I have to buy it? Does it cost extra? Well, no. Obviously, JD Edwards product modules are made up of financials, manufacturing, asset, projects. I'm not going to name them all, but they're good applications, and that's those are the tools you use to run your business. And you can also imagine that those applications have to be running on some server infrastructure somewhere, whether it's in your own data center or maybe it's on the cloud nowadays. But in the middle, in between the applications and the servers that are actually running, we have this layer we call just generally the JD Edwards digital platform. And it's made up, you might even say anchored by Orchestrator. Hopefully you've heard of Orchestrator by now. If you haven't, I'm not doing my job very well. Hopefully you're even using it. And its sister feature, the notifications, we're also throwing workflow in there, the same old good old traditional JD Edwards workflow, but in recent releases, we've done some pretty good things to reinvigorate workflow, and an entire set of capabilities that we bundle up calling our extensibility framework. In fact, when you look at this, these are our low code, no code tools. The ability to modify what the screens look like, how they behave, the data that's managed on individual forms or applications, all without having to do traditional customizations, package builds, package deployments, without heavy development skills. So we think that's cool tech, right? We think those are powerful, easy to build, easy to deploy. And the digital platform interacts with all of the JD Edwards applications, but it's also the layer that interacts your JD Edwards system with the digital economy. Again, whether it's web applications, mobile applications, Internet of Things devices, third-party systems, cloud services, all making JD Edwards very powerful and very relevant in the digital economy. We also think, as I said, Orchestrator being the anchor of the digital platform. I'll just, you may have heard me present this. This is not new, but just to sort of get a baseline, this is how Orchestrator works. We know for decades we've had traditional Enterprise One users sitting at desktops, entering transactions through the JD Edwards applications, generating business data, gigabytes, sometimes terabytes of your business data, and that's your digital gold. Well, in front of those JD Edwards applications, we've put the AIS server and Orchestrator as sort of a non-human user into those applications. Now, that's a simple concept, but the implication is very substantial, because what it means is all of these usage patterns open up. It means we can have non-human devices sending little bits of information through the orchestrator, running orchestrations, and using applications just the same as a traditional JD Edwards ERP user might be. So a forklift can actually go into Equipment Master and update its status. It also means it's very easy to build mobile apps and web applications in a low-code, no-code fashion, because these applications can call into JD Edwards through REST services. And the bulk of the logic of those applications remains on the JD Edwards side. And it's fast and easy to build these mobile applications. And you're going to get some pretty good evidence of how Steltex is marching to that as well. Process simplification, in the same way integration to third parties. We can simplify all of these patterns through simple REST calls into JD Edwards through these orchestrations. And in my opinion, one of the most fascinating is when JD Edwards interfaces with itself. When JD Edwards can check on the status of things, status of invoices, equipment, inventory in a circular manner, and then based on what it finds about itself, even automates additional orchestrations. That's a pattern we might call intelligent ERP. And again, that's how JD Edwards is interacting with the digital economy. That's orchestrations in a nutshell. As you build these orchestrations, you develop essentially a library of your own REST APIs. They're very easy to build through the studio and even through recording processes through using the JD Edwards applications. You can simply go through a set of JD Edwards forms and record orchestrations, which then become REST services. And these are things like onboarding employees or alerting low inventory. And once you build these things up, you have automations into JD Edwards. But then the question is, what goes on the left-hand side? What is it that invokes these automations and these orchestrations, these REST APIs? And that's where the magic happens. So one of those patterns that we've been saying for a long time, and it is our current mobile strategy, is that instead of JD Edwards building out a suite of mobile applications that we hope you will like and use, It turns out everybody's different. Everybody has their own requirements. And so stepping right in line with our strategy, Steltex has built out their own mechanism for very cool tech, right? And that comes in the form of AppShare, and it lines up just with our strategy. And I'll turn it over to Dan now to talk a little bit about how AppShare fits into the cool tech through Orchestrator.
Thanks, AJ. So I'm going to introduce AppShare, and we're going to show some examples and some customer testimonials around the benefits that have been derived. So firstly, what is AppShare? So AppShare is a Steltex product 100% aligned to what you've just heard from AJ from a digital platform perspective. So we leverage the orchestrator. There's no infrastructure requirements. There's no integration requirements. We have around 350 apps out of the box, and we're going to showcase that shortly. And this is all around simplifying the user interface for end users. And what you're seeing here is examples of across a broad range of functional areas within the application. So whether you're a sales individual looking at forecasting, CRM, whether you're a maintenance attendant looking at work orders, equipment, whether you're a project manager, site administrator looking at contract information, project information, etc., AppShare enables JDE to be extended to the coalface or the users that are interacting with a system in real time, as opposed to what we've seen traditionally, JDE being used as a back office function, and really limited adoption in the operational aspects of the business when we're talking about field service technicians, etc., because they're not going to be using a traditional JDE web client. They might be out on the road, for example, or they may not be skilled enough to use the web client from a shop floor perspective. So we've solved that problem through simplifying the user interface, making it available across a multitude of different devices. So whether that's a ruggedized device, whether that's a scanner, whether that's a smartphone, you can interact simply with JDE through some of the capability that you're seeing across the board, across every facet of the modules that JDE supports. Again, 350 applications out of the box. Very topical at the moment. We're dealing with lots of organizations trying to solve their AP automation, their end-to-end procure-to-pay process. And we quite often hear that a lot of the issues from an AP perspective and a lot of the challenges is around timeliness of purchase order receipts and timeliness of purchase orders being approved, particularly for organizations that have a mobile field force. So for example, we're out on site, may not be tied to the desk, so they can't receipt within the JD application, they're out on the field, etc. So one of the capabilities I have with AppShare is the procure to pay suite of applications covered off. So you can enter a purchase order across whether it's a stock, non-stock, service, subcontractor based service that you're consuming on a mobile device. You can approve a purchase order on a mobile device, or reject or inquire, etc. And you can receipt the goods on a mobile device. So we're seeing significant benefits in organization adopting these applications and capabilities to automate, streamline the procure to pay process and help remove a lot of the timeliness challenges from an AP perspective, chasing people for receipts, chasing people for purchase orders, etc. Another example here is around how the application can be used to simplify the interactions with JDE. So traditionally, if I look at how you would unload, create a pallet and move, that would be something like 4 applications in a JDE context. If you were to manually go in there and go through the application, you'd be entering 4 screens to essentially do one transaction. We can achieve the same thing on a mobile device with a scanner with one scan, one transaction. So moving into the put away process, instead of going through the JD application and entering into 6 screens and being cumbersome and clunky in terms of the navigation, we're able to automate that and streamline that with 3 scan transactions. And similarly with breaking and moving and picking goods within the warehouse, instead of using 9 applications, we can do that quite simply with 4 scans of a device using AppShare, talking real time directly to JDE through the digital platform that AJ has introduced, being specifically the orchestrator. I'm going to cover off another real world example. So this is one of our North American customers, MYR Group. The challenge they had was how to capture time, expenses for a mobile field service of 750 people, up telegraph poles, etc. Previously, they were trying to capture this with consolidating spreadsheets, paper-based trail, etc. they came to us with the challenge of how to automate this process using mobile technology and capturing the information in the field. We're able to achieve that and save them a significant amount of back office processing time, but also the benefits that came with real-time costing coming through from their projects, their work orders to the GL by capturing the data at the source of the transaction. So Mark's going to take us through a brief demonstration of that particular application. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Dan. So the user comes in, taps on work order entry, that loads in AppShare a list of the time entries that they have already created, which are listed in date order and with a summary at the top. So really nice, simple interface for the users. To create a new time entry, I just hit the plus button. I key in the work order that I've been working on for a work order based time entry. And this will be validated against JDE, so the user can't key one against something that doesn't exist. I select the date using a very easy to use calendar date picker that I've been working on. I select the pay type, and this is an easy to use drop down list, which is contextual for the users. And then from there, all I need to do is key in the number of hours that I've been spending on this, this work order. Hit save at the bottom. And that's going to update JDE. So that's going to create my time entry into JDE. And when it's done, it's going to give me very simple feedback in the form of a green banner at the bottom of the screen to say that's been done. I can also delete and edit time entries via the application as well. So we'll take a look at editing the bottom one. I'll bring that up. I need to change, for whatever reason, however many hours I've spent on this, this task or this work order. Very simple again. Jump in, I'm changing it from 5 to 7. Again, hit save. That's updating JDE in real time. And again, gives me a very nice, simple piece of feedback to say that's been saved. Thanks, Dan.
That's a classic example of, if you look at the business problem we're trying to solve there, mobile field technicians who have no means of accessing JDE through the traditional sense. And the other challenge is the timeliness of that time being captured costed to project to work orders. So what you've been able to see there is a simple user interface, leveraging the digital platform that AJ has introduced. So real-time integration back to JDE, no low code, no code in terms of the design of the application, no integration outside of the AIS server, no infrastructure to support that, and very easy to use. So semi-skilled technicians can use these applications as opposed to having to use the traditional web client back at a site or site office. And just to reinforce, we cover off a broad range of industries and footprints, again, 350 apps across every module in JDE that you can possibly think of and use from an operational back office perspective. And here's a couple of examples of customers that we deployed the solution to. I'll leave the following slide as a takeaway. You'll receive the slides and details. We've got a number of testimonials, business benefits that have been achieved there from various organisations, and hopefully you can align your business to what they've been able to achieve using the digital platform AJ's introduced in conjunction with the Steltex AppShare product. Thank you, AJ.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Dan. Thanks, Mark. So there I am saying, right, that with the JD Edwards digital platform and orchestrator, you could build these orchestrations and call them from low code, no code, mobile apps and web devices and scanners. We can simplify processes. You know, as Dan said, what's something that the traditional ERP user on the right-hand side might be going through 4, 5, 6 different forms. That's really not necessary. And with an alternative user interface, like which can be built with AppShare, all that's simplified. So here I am from JD Edwards Development saying it's possible, and thanks to Steltex for making it possible and actually putting it to good use with customers. Here's another example, right? What goes on the left-hand side? I said that it is possible to invite non-human users, machines, robots, automated devices, sending little bits of information in through orchestrations instead of a human user interacting with the JD Edwards applications. You still want your JD Edwards to be the source of truth, right? You still want all that data in your ERP system, but it doesn't have to be a human user that tries to enter it manually. Make it more real-time, accurate, and timely. So Dan, want to talk about some of the ways you've implemented Internet of Things patterns through Orchestrator?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, AJ. So the previous examples we ran through were really around digitizing processes for human intervention and pushing that to the coalface so people can consume, capture transactions in real time. We use the same technology app share and the same components of the digital platform being orchestrated to now communicate from JDE to machines. And we've got some examples where we've automated, in this particular example, so autonomous or driverless forklifts. So using the orchestrator and app share to enable autonomous driverless forklifts within a warehouse for one of our European-based customers, which gave a significant benefit in terms of not just labour cost savings, but also the efficiencies and reduction in errors when it came to picking, processing those particular orders. The second example we talked to is around automating the robots within a warehouse to facilitate the automated put away and picking of particular goods. So previously, this organisation, Solar, had used diesel powered forklifts, etc., to manually route goods throughout their warehouse. What we were able to achieve using the orchestrator is to automate and integrate to the Solar robot technology to automate that process end to end, which had significant, again, labour savings, efficiency savings, but I suppose in this day and age, importantly, CO2 in terms of removing those carbon heavy devices from the warehouse and replacing them with electric devices you can see in front of you. And the final example, again, is an example of with Purifarm, where we've automated the inbound put away process using orchestrator and app share, again, machine to machine communication. We've covered off human, we've covered off machine to machine, and now I'm going to talk about enterprise. And I went to the marketing team and said, what do you think about when you think about enterprise? And they came up with the Starship Enterprise chip that you can see in front of you, which initially I kind of thought, okay. But then I got to thinking warp speed and really digitizing your enterprise, it kind of made sense. So I was stuck with it. So we're able to use the same digital platform to not only talk from machine to machine, but enterprise to enterprise. So what we've enabled with e-invoicing is the digital exchange of invoice information from your JDE AP or your JDE AR to other finance systems, and removing the human intervention required to either A, generate the invoice from an AR perspective in the first place, or B, consume it from an AP perspective and all the matching that comes with the purchase order approval process. So we do this through the adoption of e-invoicing. So if you look at a traditional process, and it doesn't matter whether you're the buyer or the sender from a JDE perspective here, because it works on both sides, you traditionally would create a PDF, you would mail, send it, etc. The consumer would typically OCR that and then digest that into their ERP system. We've removed the requirement for all that manual processing, including the OCR, and we're able to digitally exchange and connect finance systems, business to business or enterprise to enterprise, to be able to send and able to consume a structured XML industry standard file format, which is part of the PEPOL international standard. So that example you can see there is an e-invoice which is generated out of JDE and sent to another finance package. So to be able to join and connect enterprise to enterprise seamlessly with the digital exchange of invoices is capability that we've enabled through Steltex products, but also, again, using the orchestrator and the digital platform that AJ has introduced to, again, orchestrate that end-to-end process. And Kernay is a classic example of that. So we've implemented the e-invoicing solution for Kernay across both across their financial processes, and they had a 400% reduction in processing or increase in productivity. And they were already coming from a semi-automated. They got rid of their OCR technology and went to full electronic exchange of invoice information. Removing that OCR step out of the process gave them significant benefits and cost reductions in the end-to-end process. And again, here's some takeaways in terms of customer testimonials, in terms of the business benefits that have been derived by adopting some machine-to-machine and enterprise integration using the digital platform that Oracle provide in unison with the Steltex products. We'll leave these as takeaways for you. And back to you, AJ.
Great, thanks. And I asked you earlier, we put up that slide of the JD Edwards strategy and 3 bullets on there. Those 3 bullets in the digital platform, listing our objectives, integration, low code, no code tools, and integrations. So certainly that enterprise to enterprise communication, cool way of doing that. It's not even an option anymore in today's economy. I would say the digital economy just depends on such a smooth, accurate, timely exchange of electronic information. Another one of those things that goes on the left-hand side, interesting, what user, what business analyst doesn't love to see data right in front of their face in the form of a spreadsheet, to look at it, to analyze it, possibly manipulate it, and then that data represents the input into some amount of JD Edwards transactions. And how boring and tedious would it be that after seeing that data on a spreadsheet, collecting it possibly from another system, possibly just generating it yourself, manipulating it, having to look at that spreadsheet, and then over on the right-hand side of this slide, sit in front of a JD Edwards application and start typing that data in to a JD Edwards application. Wouldn't it be better if that spreadsheet just acted like a device, acted like a source of information, and we could take the data on that spreadsheet and automatically run it through orchestrations? And in fact, once again, Steltic has come up to the plate and built a solution that matches that exact pattern with their DropZone product. So Dan, tell us about DropZone.
Yeah, thanks, AJ. So DropZone is essentially an Excel-based tool for the mass update or mass insert, mass extraction of data into and out of JDE, with all the benefits of respecting the orchestrator, the AIS server, the security, the validation that you know and have heard from AJ in relation to how that digital platform works. So consider it as an Excel plug front end to be able to get data in and out of JDE. So we're going to show a short example of that here, where we're going to upload. So the use case here is I'm basically taking a pre-formatted spreadsheet, which is item updates. This could be 1,000 product updates into your particular environment. Something that would take you probably something like 18 minutes to update in JDE. We're going to see some statistics shortly. We can drag and drop into DropZone, which is the Steltic product, which hooks into the digital platform that AJ has spoken about. And it's taken 9 seconds to update those transactions. So item updates could be category codes, could be branch line information, et cetera, as opposed to what would take you through using the traditional application 18 minutes to do manually. So extrapolate this across the different updates that you do within your organization across a multitude of different forms, which I'll show shortly. You can get significant benefits through the adoption of this particular tool. Now, all of this is managed from a security perspective, so it respects, because it's using Orchestrator, because it's using AIS, your application security from a JDE perspective. All the data is validated, again, because we're using the digital platform that AJ's introduced. So all of that is taken care of, and again, why we align ourselves so closely to the Oracle product strategy. So I've shown you one example there, which was an item product update. We've got hundreds of pre-built forms across a broad range of functionality within JDE. So whether it's supply chain, whether it's maintenance, whether it's finance transactions that you're looking to update, upload, extract, we've got a template. You can drag and drop them into Excel and achieve what you've just seen through that short video. And a couple of customer testimonials. So thank you, David. I know you're on the call today, so I appreciate your support there. So North Power in New Zealand are a DropZone user, very happy DropZone user, have been for a long time. And really they use it and it's a must-have for managing their supplier catalog. So supplier item of catalog relationships, managing and maintaining that through DropZone is the key use case there. But this solution literally saves organizations hundreds of hours on any given year across a broad range of updates that you would be performing in a typical JDE environment. Thank you, AJ.
Well, that's an awesome tour through a bunch of very high value Steltic success. And once again, we appreciate you keeping in step with our strategy, turning what we think is cool tech, historically into cool solutions and cool real value to customers. You said one thing there, Dan, that I'd like to go back to. You mentioned the value of going through the AIS orchestrator layer to interface with the JD Edwards applications, right? Integrating to JD Edwards is certainly nothing new. It's been around since the first decade of JD Edwards, and it's been going on for decades. But so many times our integration patterns have been geared around point-to-point connectors, or calling business functions directly, or even, heaven forbid, going directly into the database and manipulating JD Edwards data. And that could be effective. There's a little bit of danger there, but going through this orchestrator layer, you have the advantage of complying with all JD Edwards security, all JD Edwards integrity. Right? The applications themselves are what enforce that. And so going through the orchestrator layer and going through the application layer is what preserves that security and integrity. So that's worth repeating. I'd like to leave you now, or kind of conclude with, we're not done with making more cool tech. The JD Edwards Development Organization has a strong roadmap. We've been enhancing the product quarter by quarter, year by year, release by release, with more cool stuff. And one of those cool things that I think bears some attention is a recent enhancement we're calling logic extensions. Now, part of it, would think back to the beginning of this presentation, I said part of the JD Edwards digital platform was a set of functionality we call the extensibility framework. And by that, we mean a bunch of tools where you can take JD Edwards and extend how it behaves, modify how it behaves to your use, but without the traditional baggage of customizations, without the high development cost, without package builds and deployment, and without, for future updates, without the need to go and retrofit a bunch of custom modifications. So if you're interested in doing that and keeping your JD Edwards system tuned to how you work, but without the baggage of traditional customizations, I would encourage you to do a deeper dive into the extensibility framework. And a big part of that is a new feature we're calling logic extensions. And these logic extensions can we go back one, Chris, before we get here? All right, logic extensions are our way of making available functionality like conditional logic, looping, text manipulation, numeric manipulation like arithmetic, date manipulations. We can call reports, we can call business functions, we can actually do table input and output directly from these logic extensions. So there's a lot of power here that used to be locked up in Form Design Aid or our JD Edwards development tools, but now we've elevated that to a level where we can do it simply through a web browser. We can deploy these things simply through a web browser, and they're part of our user-defined object framework, where they're not custom modifications. They're just XML specifications loaded into a database, and they run at runtime. They're always available. There's security behind them. They're easy to develop for people who don't know a computing language, but they're also very, very powerful in the hands of a traditional JD Edwards developer. So they really apply to two audiences: the business analyst, who may be frustrated that they have a solution right in their mind, but just don't have the programming skills to get it done. They also appeal to the traditional JD Edwards developer who can visualize and build complex solutions. There's plenty of cool tech in here. And speaking of cool tech, we've invited one of our coolest JD Edwards developers to demonstrate the power of these logic extensions. And we thought we'd leave you with a little bit of fun. So, next slide. Yeah. There is a traditional, historic, call it a puzzle, call it a game, called the Tower of Hanoi. And it goes like this. You start with a stack of disks, the largest on the bottom and the smallest on the top. And what you're supposed to do is move that stack of disks from one pile to another, but you have to abide by some rules. And the rules are you can only move one disk at a time, and you could never put a larger disk on top of a smaller disk. Now, in this stack, you can have n number of disks, right? It can go from anywhere from 1 up to as many as you like. But obviously, the puzzle gets more and more complex based on the number of disks in the stack. And the perfect solution, if you were the smartest person in the world and you could figure out how to do this according to the rules, the perfect number, the smallest number of moves, mathematically turns out to be 2 to the n minus 1. So in this case that we're seeing here, we have 4 disks. So it would be 2 to the 4th minus 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. That would be 15 moves is the perfect solution. Well, our cool developer, Haiyan Wang, who's joining us today, figured out how to solve this puzzle using recursion capabilities that will be included in an upcoming, soon to be available JD Edwards release using logic extensions. So Haiyan, I'd like to turn it over to you and show off a little bit about what you can do, what logic extensions can do in the hands of a smart developer.
All right, thank you, AJ, and then thanks to Steltex for having me. Well, I figured out how to pick the screen that I want to share. So like AJ mentioned, can you see my web client?
Yep,
We can.
we can see that. Yep.
Good, thanks. So you'll be able to call nested functions from logic extensions. And in my opinion, this truly augments the computing power of logic extensions. I wrote a simple logic extension to solve the game that AJ just talked about. So I store the step-by-step instructions in an output array of the logic extension. I included that logic extension in an orchestration. I converted the logic extension output into a CSV file. And ultimately, I returned the file as the orchestration output. And lastly, I call the orchestration from a button on the form. So as you can see, this is actually another planned feature where I can download the orchestration file output from form extensions. And when I press this button, I need to enter the number of disks that I want to solve. So in my case, I want to use 5. Like AJ mentioned, this is a classic algorithm. For my input, I will need 31 steps to move the disks from tower A to tower B. So when I press that button, the instruction is already, well, the logic extension already finished on the server, and then the instruction is written into a CSV file, and then I'm able to download the file as the orchestration output. So when I open it up, I better have, can you see my spreadsheet?
You can.
Awesome. So I have 31 steps. Yay, that just makes me the smartest person.
You are. Can you zoom in a little bit on that so that we can read it, Haiyan?
Let me see.
Yeah, bottom right, there's the zoom.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Thank you.
So yeah, I mean, that happened so fast that you might not have even caught it. But that logic extension that Haiyan wrote executed literally in milliseconds, right? As soon as she pushed that button, the logic extension iterated through the problem and figured out which disks to move, and then wrote out as output the actual steps that a human would do. Move disk 1 from tower A to tower B, blah, blah, blah. And as we said, the perfect solution is 2 to the n. In this case, n is 5. So 2 to the 5th minus 1 would be 32 minus 1
Yeah.
is 30,
Because
31
actually,
steps.
yeah, the first row is a title. So
Is a
31
title.
steps. Yep.
So we've solved, Haiyan has solved this problem, written it out. Now, of course, that's fun, right? We solved a puzzle. Now it's up to you to use your imagination to think of what other algorithms you would write, and to realize that you now have that power in your hand in the form of logic extensions to solve business problems, possibly to do statistical analysis. Maybe it's um, pulling data out of the database and doing aggregations and sums and averages which we can already do, and calculating standard deviations. You mathematicians out there, we trust you to put this to good use. I have no doubt that the smart folks at Steltex are going to dig into this and have a ball with it. So I'm expecting more good things to come in the future, Dan. No pressure.
Thanks, AJ. And then many of the folks on the call actually did the summer school form logic extension course, so they've had some exposure to it. But obviously, there's some new capability coming on, which we're all pretty excited about. So thanks, AJ. All right, one thing you haven't mentioned, AJ, when did Orchestrator come out? Hit me with a stat.
That was July of 2015. So coming up on 8 years. Can you believe it?
Yeah, well, it's important context because the whole session's around cool tech and how to get there, right? So what we're saying is if you want to be cool and adopt and adapt to some of the technology that we've showcased today, you need to be on a current release, right? And we're not talking about, the release that's about to come out next month, although that would be great. We're talking about 9.2, which has been around for a period of time, and you just said Orchestrator's been out since 2015. So if you're on older releases, then to unlock the value that we've just showcased, remove some of the technical debt, automate some of the business processes, it is significantly, infinitely easier once you're onto the 9.2 platform with the Orchestrator enabled. We can start to do some of the things that you've seen showcased today. Next one. So yeah, we being Steltex is all about working smarter, not harder, and simplifying the user experience and pushing JDE to the boundaries of the business where we're capturing that data in real time, as opposed to having to be centralized and data entry processes. And really enabling people that have never used an ERP before, maybe it's semi-skilled workers, simplified user interface to execute their transactions with the richness of that data being caught at the point in time of entry. Onboarding users is significantly easier. Obviously, the simpler the user experience, the simpler the onboarding and the training process is. And we've experienced that firsthand with many case studies. I think there's a couple of and I think we've reiterated this: natively deployed, so no infrastructure. We coexist or complement the AIS server, no integration required. All of the security is taken care of as part of the digital platform that AJ showcased today. We're able to replace a lot of customization systems that batch export data out. Those sort of technologies is not something that we're interested in adopting and aligning ourselves to what you've seen from an Oracle perspective today. And ultimately, enabling your organization to get onto that continuous, that visionary statements of always being updated from a JD Edwards perspective, the continuous delivery by removing that technical debt and making it easy to adopt functionality as and when it's released. And the JD product development team are doing an amazing job of the regular updates that they're providing, and you've just seen some examples of stuff that's just around the corner, AJ, in terms of the release dates. So that concludes the content that we had covered off. So hopefully we can concur that there was some cool stuff covered off in terms of the functionality. It depends on your definition of cool. Back to AJ's earlier point, I have no doubt, but hopefully there's some use cases and some examples that's resonated with your business. If you want to find out more information, then obviously you can respond in relation to the marketing messages or the messages that you receive from myself or Tim about the webinar, and we'll definitely follow up and tailor something that's specific to you and your business. Now, there is a Q&A feature within the Teams. I don't believe anyone has logged any questions as yet, which means either we've been very clear or that feature's not working. So hopefully it is. And maybe, AJ, can you just check yours to make sure that you haven't got any questions that have come through?
I'm seeing nothing as well. Yep.
Yeah. I'll just give it a minute to see if anyone is asking a question. Yeah, there is a question, so it is working. So just let me. Okay, so probably one for you, AJ. So the question from Simon. Hey, thanks, Simon. How about using Oracle Apex as integrating tool and core orchestrations from a mobile device? So I think from a Steltex perspective, we've certainly explored this. There's definitely some downsides around APEX, and I don't want to talk out of school in relation to AJ and what he might say, but that was the path that MYR started down, deploying an APEX-based solution and run into some pretty significant hurdles pretty quickly. And we were able to help them with the AppShare product, and it just plugged into AIS so much easier and was so much easier to use and consume. So I think APEX is certainly an option, AJ, but we've experienced some real world challenges with that particular product as it relates to mobile devices, is my view.
Yeah, and you know, when you look at the entire Oracle portfolio, so thanks for considering, you know, the Oracle portfolio at large. There's a lot of cool tech in the Oracle portfolio as well. At a high level, there's the theory that says Orchestrator and these orchestrations themselves are REST APIs, and Orchestrator can reach out and invoke external REST APIs. Therefore, in theory, any third-party system that also can and speak through, you know, JSON payloads or XML, or can send and receive JSON REST API calls, would be able to interact with Orchestrator. That's a very broad theoretical statement. And certainly we've got a lot of success in that area. But when you sit down to do a very specific solution, right, you may run into some very specific problems, right? And that's what I think you're referring to, Dan, which is, of course, why you want to work with a partner, somebody who's been through these hurdles, have experienced these things already, and can come up with creative solutions. So I have no doubt that in some specific use cases, there could have been some very real hurdles to using Oracle Apex. Other Oracle tools also expose other REST APIs, and in this case, you know, AppShare with Steltix fit the bill well, and you know, so there's a better solution. It all comes down to, you know, your requirements for security, for scalability, for connectivity, for payload exchange, JSON, XML, CSV. Are you moving files? Large payloads, small payloads. And those are all the bangs and bruises that Steltix has been through to help customers get solutions that work.
Thanks, AJ. Simon, hopefully that answers your question. I'm happy to follow up on that one if you would like also. So thank you everyone for your participation. You will receive a follow-up email with a link to the recording for today's content. So feel free to distribute that with other members in the organisation who may not have been able to attend. We certainly appreciate your time. We certainly appreciate AJ, Hyan, you joining in the preparation and delivery of this webinar. And hopefully everyone got something out of today's session. So thank you, everyone, and we'll close the session now.